California, Oklahoma, Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida. This is League One NCAA football. This is League One NCAA football.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of League One College Game Day. I am Coach Silent Storm, here with me, Coach Spector, and we are coming to you live to kind of talk about how our League One season has finished up as we finished up the regular season, and we are about to head into the conference championship week.
That's right. Coach Spector here. We are finishing the regular season, getting ready to go into the postseason. That'll start with the conference championships, and then, of course, the week following will be the long-awaited bowl games. So taking a look at each of our teams throughout the season, taking a look back here to start things out, kind of a season in review for the regular season. For those of you who weren't aware, we are in week 15. We had a couple of week 15 scores to report. Only two games involved this week. App State clinches and locks up the Sun Belt Conference thanks to a rousing 55-14 win over Arkansas State. Meanwhile, in the classic Army-Navy game in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Army falls victim to a game Navy side coached by Coach Ninja, 28-17, the final score there in that rivalry game. That's a non-conference game for Navy. It'll have no effect on their American Conference race, which we'll get to in just a moment. But taking a look at how that affects things, if we move over to App State's schedule and take a look at their seasons to this point, their regular season year in review, they opened at they had 4 road games to start the season. Georgia Southern, Coastal Carolina, both early season Sun Belt Conference games. Coastal Carolina came back big time in that game and ended up losing by 3. App State was ahead by much more in that game in the early going. But as it turns out, Coastal Carolina, a very game 7-4 football team, and did themselves proud throughout the season and were a contender for the conference championship, falling a little bit short to the Mountaineers. They then, in week 3, played a user game against Coach Ninja's Navy, and that game was an instant classic, going to 4 overtimes. App State scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, trailed by 2 scores more than midway through the fourth frame, and they were able to come back and force overtime. And then back and forth they went, the two of them exchanging blows until in the fourth overtime, App State was able to convert a touchdown following Navy's field goal. Week 4, they faced off against the number 2 ranked Syracuse Orange, coached by myself. That was in New York, and it wasn't particularly close. I believe that App State fell victim to a couple of turnovers. This game ended up having to be simulated because it was at the end of the game. There was zeros on the clock, and we had a glitch out, and we lost the result. So it's not reflected in the stats that are here, but the result was almost identical by 20 something points, and it was due to several interceptions by App State. That was something that they put to rest a couple of weeks later when they hosted Washington in their home opener. The Mountaineer fans had to wait a long time to see their team in action, and boy, did their wait pay off. Washington came into the game undefeated and a national championship contender. App State reeling from the loss to Syracuse, trying to get back on the winning trail, and was able to do so 24-21 in what was a very technical user game. The game was poised on a knife's edge the entire way through, and App State was able to persevere at the end of the Barker Bowl. It would be 2 more bye weeks, 3 in a span of 4 weeks in the middle of the season there for App State, almost 2 half seasons with a break in between, before they reconvened for their final 6 games. 2 on the road, or sorry, their final 7 games, 2 on the road, 5 at home to close out, all conference games. And it was perhaps the time off didn't serve them very well. They ended up losing to Texas State by 16, a Texas State team that they should beat 9 times out of 10, if not more. But they fell victim to 8 interceptions in that game, and you cannot turn the ball over 8 times and have a chance to win. Texas State prevailed 37-21 in that one. But they rebounded the rest of the way, beating Louisiana handily, crushing Troy, crushing ULM, crushing Georgia State, beating South Alabama by a good handful, and then Arkansas State, obviously 55-14, the final in that one. So if you look over the course of the season, it was the Texas State game, the Washington game, and the Syracuse game where they were in the 20s on offense. The rest of the time, 50 or above on offense, 52, their lowest total in conference outside of the Texas State game. So this is a very high scoring offense. They've given up their share of points as well. You see a lot of 30s and 20s throughout this board, a few 50s early on. But that can be related to turnovers more so than the App State defense necessarily. So this is a team that finishes 10-2 in the regular season, wins their conference. They're in the top 25 right now. Will continue to do so since they won't be in a conference championship game. The Sun Belt, of course, being a conference without one, but a very successful season for App State, going 10-2, their best record to date under Coach Barker, and with rumors swirling around about whether he may stay or go in the offseason. This is certainly a season to hang his hat on.
And it was a great season for the Appalachian State Mountaineers, and great season for Coach Barker. done wonderful things with that team. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next user team, the Buffalo Bulls, coached by Coach Hannon. These guys came out and I think sort of shocked the world. Um, Probably not a lot of hype around this team early in the season, but man oh man, as they kept playing, they kept earning more and more respect and more hype. They didn't. They had a bye week, week one, and they had to start their season off against the user, Fresno State, myself, at home, and they were able to pull that one off with a 3-point victory. Fresno State tried to make a late push at the end, but Buffalo was able to stop the push and secure the victory, and which gave the Bulls their first win. They followed it up with a road game against another user, so they went back-to-back user games to start the season against Indiana, and they were able to again win that one by 3 points. So already early tests of this team, winning both those by 3 points. And so this team was starting to believe in themselves and starting to feel really good. They follow that up with a bye, and then they're going to be back at home against Arizona State, and they just seem to love playing these close, tight-knit games, winning again by 3, 38-28. And then this Ball State game. This is one that now, as you look at how Ball State finished out at number 18 and Buffalo sitting at 16, this one is kind of where heads started turning towards Buffalo. Like, could these guys be legit? Or is this a team that people might need to be afraid of? They win that one 42-31. Then a crushing victory against Toledo. Had no problem with them there. Then they had to face off against an old user team as coach had retired, but his team, his players are still there and knew this was going to be a tough contest and really were excited to see what Buffalo could do on the road against this Ohio team and able to pull this one out in overtime. And this is when the country, the league, everybody knew, like, okay, Buffalo's legit. These guys are definitely a team to be reckoned with, and they've won at that point 6 straight games. They follow with an easy win at home over the Miami Ohio Redhawks, and then another test that we said, let's see if this Buffalo team is, as good as they really are. They went on the road against Oklahoma State in a thrilling game against them, taking that one into overtime, winning 59-57, and this is what really I thought solidified them as one of the top tier teams, and it was a big win heading into a really big week, probably their toughest point of the season, having to play the user at Central Michigan, and that game being at the time was going to be their only loss, losing 13-17 in a close game, very defensive game. Was just one of the classics to watch. Both teams were undefeated going into it. So much around this game. They were both in the top 10 at this point of the season, so it was a really, really great game. But Central Michigan was able to edge out the Bulls in that one. But it was such a great game, and they answered back with that disappointing loss with a 13-point victory against a really not that great of a team in Akron, sitting there at 111 at the end of the season. Then another good team in the MAC, Bowling Green, pulling that one up by 3, 27-24. And then a little bit disappointment for them at the very end of the season, losing to Kent State in overtime. And it was, I believe it might have been 6 overtimes to decide this game. And Kent State gets it by the 2-point conversion, winning 78-76. It had Buffalo finish off 10-2, 6-2, but they still won their side of the MAC Conference Championship, so they will be heading to Detroit to play in the MAC Conference Championship. But I know that they were probably disappointed with that last loss, but it really didn't do anything other than kind of hurt themselves in the polls and, possibly BCS bid at that point.
Yeah, 4 3-point wins there by Buffalo in regulation. They had a four overtime game against Ohio, a three overtime game against Oklahoma State, and that five overtime game against Kent State. So they've been involved in a lot of close games this year, and more often than not have come out on the winning side, as you see, ranked 16th currently. That's about to change given the next release of the polls is imminent. Moving on to Central Michigan, the other team in the MAC. Coach Blitzkrieg came through with, well, so far, what's been a magical run. Um, Looking at Central Michigan's schedule, they opened at North Carolina. Um, that is a school that Coach Blitzkrieg had formerly been a coordinator for. And then 2 weeks later, after they beat North Carolina by 20, coming home against North Texas, a team that Blitzkrieg has actually been the head coach for in the reunion tour of North Carolina and North Texas. Central Michigan rips off a 31-point win over Coach Blitzkrieg's former school. Then a user game in Indiana, on the road in Indiana against Coach Seawack. Central Michigan. This was the moment when, with a 20-point victory over a user, over a good user coach, when you started to think, well, Central Michigan 3-0 start. They're off to a good run here. Let's see what happens. It was a big test against Fresno State the following week in week 6. They played a very hungry Fresno State team that was looking for their first win after having several close losses themselves. And so Fresno State emptied the chamber, emptied every round in the chamber, and it took a lot of close end game heroics by Central Michigan to pull that out in a game that was probably a little bit closer than the score indicates. And then moving on to Miami of Ohio in week 7 and crushing them in the MAC, easily handling Western Michigan as well as Eastern Michigan, defeating a winning Kent State team that Buffalo had trouble with by 28. And then, of course, the big game, the win over Buffalo that we were just talking about on Buffalo's schedule, that 17-13 win ended with Buffalo inside Central Michigan's 20. But Central Michigan's red zone defense was enough to survive. There was no defense the following week in the game against Ball State, 84-68. These two basketball powerhouses uh, results in a 16-point win where there was literally no offense. You're talking about a game with 150 points put up on the scoreboard, 152 to be exact. And, it was back and forth up and down the field all day. You wondered if they were going to have enough oxygen on the sidelines. Toledo, an easy win after that, winning by 31, and then an even easier win to close out against Northern Illinois. You see nothing but W's on Central Michigan's schedule. They remain undefeated. They are third in the country currently, undefeated, untied, going to the conference championship game as a lock. They've clinched it, obviously, with an undefeated season. And they are a part of the national title picture, which we'll get to in a little bit. But a fantastic season by Coach Blitzkrieg. His best season ever, no matter how it shakes out. This is by far the highest he's ever been ranked in the polls, and certainly deserves to be applauded on a magnificent regular season for the Chippewas.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Having personally played him myself, he's done a lot of great things with this team. Definitely deserving of the rank and the end result of that 12-0. He's had to play some tough teams and he's gotten it done. And especially a lot of these games putting up big numbers. So he's got the players and pieces there. Really excited to see what's going to happen into the conference championship week and into the postseason as we move on. As we do have a few undefeated teams that we can go into later. So we definitely have a lot of exciting and interesting things that can happen from conference championship week leading into our bowl week. So we'll go ahead next here at the East Carolina Pirates, coached by Sorry, had to clear my throat there real quick. Um,
Coach Brack.
Coach Brack, yes, Coach Brack here at East Carolina. Had to open up the season against the defending national champions on the road against Syracuse, and really was in that game until the very end. They kind of let that game slip away, some turnover issues, but played hard. Um, gave Syracuse a good look, a tough push early, and they tested that team. And the I'd say the skill and the experience there in Syracuse started to show very late in the end, but played that game good all the way to the end, never quit. And so they lost that one by 2 touchdowns, but that game, like we mentioned one earlier, might have been closer than the score shows. Then they go on a bye, and then they got to play a on paper good Boise State team, and they narrowly win that one by 4 points. Then they go on the road against a user who has on paper again just a stellar roster and just gets completely obliterated. The Washington, kept starters in even up big and just kept running the score up in there. So very disappointing, to see a user versus user match get that far out of hand, um, especially only primarily with starters staying in the game. If backups come in and you're still scoring, hey, there's you have a good day, you have a good day. But when you see a user grow up big and continue to kind of push it down to them, it's upsetting. But yeah, so tough, difficult loss there. Then they follow that one up against a Big 12 opponent, TCU, and get a win. So it's always good to, love getting those Power 5, especially when you're not in a P5 conference. Always feels good beating those Power 5 teams. So they get one there, and from here they start to get into their American play, pull out a close game over Memphis in overtime, winning that one by 3. And then at the time, SMU was ranked. They were playing really good football at the time. I don't know how SMU finished the back half, but it seems like they might have started losing. But SMU, good football team. East Carolina on the road gets just obliterated there, losing by 23 points. So a little bit of a tough start for the Pirates, losing. They were sitting 3-3 about halfway through the season, but right from that moment on, Coach got his team on together on that bye week, and he got his team rolling. They go and win pretty easily over a good USF team, just dominating on both sides of the ball. Offense can move the ball and just shutting down that USF offense. And so they get a big win on the road there after their bye week. They get a pretty good win, an 18-point win over UConn the next week. Dominated Temple. Then they play Navy in a user match, and this is a matchup that we were very excited to see. Couldn't wait to see, and ECU was able to pull a 3-point victory in that user game. So it was a great one there. Then the road rivalry game against Marshall. The ECU Marshall game. Everybody loves to talk about some of those classic rivalries, and this is one of them. And ECU won that one very easily, and they finish with a easy win over Cincinnati to lock up their side of the American Conference and to lock their spot into the American Conference Championship game. But 3-3 start, and they go and win 6 straight to in the back half. So he's got his team clicking, and he's got them clicking at the right time.
Speaking of clicking at the right time, Fresno State didn't start out the year clicking. If you look at their schedule, those first 5 games, you see a lot of digits there next to the school names: number 16, number 2, number 10, number 6, number 3. And looking at the opponent's win-loss record, 10-2, 12-0, 11-1, 11-1, 12-0. Certainly the gauntlet to start the year. Didn't know it at the time, but it bears out that that was a particularly difficult early part of the season for the Fresno State Bulldogs. They lose by 3 in the opener at Buffalo. They lose by 17 to Syracuse, and then by 6 to Air Force, who's 11-1 and in their conference. New Mexico, top 10 all throughout the year, just about. They are 11-1 this year, and that was a 3-point loss to New Mexico. A couple of late scores by Fresno. They never gave up. but just didn't just they just ran out of time. Is really all that happened in that game. The Central Michigan game, obviously, we talked about it a minute ago in the Central Michigan schedule. That was a use your game, finishing 31-20. Colorado State was where Fresno State began to find their footing. It was a shootout, but they were able to put 55 points on the board and outlast and outscore the Rams to get their first win heading into the bye week. Taking advantage of the rest, they come out, they hit the Smurf turf up in Boise, Idaho, and they come away with a 49-42 win in a road rivalry game against another team that was equally as desperate as they were to get their season turned around. Then UNLV back at home in Fresno, in the Valley, a 9-3, very game, very good UNLV team that took care of business against one other user this year. Fresno State gets the win by 6, and they've suddenly got 3 wins, and the season is starting to look a little bit rosier. The all hope is not lost, and they still have an opportunity within their division because all their division games are coming late. In the division against San Jose State, another rivalry game on the road this time. The Fresno State Bulldogs pull out a 7-point win, 41-34, and they've got 4 in a row. Then San Diego State, another big time game, a rivalry game at home against the Aztecs, and the Fresno State Bulldogs pull it out again by 10 points. The offense clicking by this point. 55, 49, 34, 41, 55 in that 5-game stretch to get Fresno State back to 500. Their regular season ended with a game at Nevada against a team that surprised Fresno State in making the game as close as it was. But Fresno State had enough tools in the toolbox to get it done and came out with a 30-27 road victory before coming home and playing in another rivalry game, this time against fellow user coach Silent Hawk. Silent Storm and Silent Hawk played a very quiet game in Fresno State, and it was 38-30 when all was said and done. Hawaii gamely fought through injuries. Hawaii, of course, had their third string freshman quarterback playing in that game. No, actually, it was their backup quarterback, but it certainly wasn't their starter. And really did the best that they could against, by this point, a red hot Bulldogs team. Bulldogs emerged victorious 38-30, and it was actually the Nevada game that clinched the division for them. And they've won their division, and they are moving on to the conference championship game after starting 0-5 and 0-2 in the conference. But to their benefit, all of their divisional games coming there in the final stretch when they were heated up. Credit to Coach Silent Storm coming back on the season, fighting back from an 0-5 start, and really kind of the turnaround story of the season in League One this year.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So a lot of hard work there, and was easily feeling like things weren't going to go my way. 0-5 start, could easily just hang up the hat and say, all right, let's look forward to next year. But decided, let's keep pushing it out and keep toughing it out. And glad to be where we are now. And a team similar, kind of had a very similar story. You look at their first 3 opponents, you see the same thing. You see at number 5, number 16, number 1, and number 3. And with 11-1, 10-2, 12-0, 12-0. So very tough start for the Indiana Hoosiers, coached by Coach Seawag. And, saw losses in all of those games by 7, by 3, got blown out by Northwestern, who's looking really good this year. And then a big loss to Central Michigan, who we mentioned before, having a great season. And right here, rivalry game on the road against Illinois. This seemed to be possibly a turning point for the Hoosiers as they get the 4-point victory there, going to the bye week, and they come back with 3 straight road games, and 2 of those being rivalry games, and they win all 3 games. So it was really looking like the Hoosiers were turning their season around. They get the big win over Purdue. They get a huge win on the road against Michigan State by 3, and they beat the Rutgers in overtime by 7. Then they play Maryland, not so great of a team, or I guess you could say not as much prestige here in the Big Ten, but they beat them by 5 points there. So it's really looking like, hey man, the Hoosiers have their they have their destiny in their hands. They really can control this themselves. And thought this they could be doing the same thing. Indiana, Fresno State, the two turnaround programs of the year, but they had to play what we've been considering probably their toughest part of their schedule each and every year is when they have that Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State back half. And it turned out to be just like what we thought, where they have the struggles and they play home against number 14 Michigan and just get dominated in that one. And the next week they follow up, played a better game, almost able to pull it out, but they lose again at home to Ohio number 17 Ohio State by 7. But they're able to end the season on a high note with the win on the road against Penn State to not only finish on a high note, but to get them at that 6-6 records. That 6 wins big for them because it keeps them bowl eligible.
Yeah, we'll see when we look at the Big Ten overall standings. When you combine both divisions, that Indiana's 6-3 record puts them up fairly high in the conference standings, and that's going to get them a pretty good bowl berth. But that bowl berth only came about in that final regular season game, a snow game up in Happy Valley against the Nittany Lions, where Indiana comes out 27-10 victors. And looking, if we're talking about those final three games, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, this is the fourth year for Coach Seawack at Indiana. He's now completed 4 regular seasons. Uh, Indiana in that time is 0-8 in the two Michigan and Ohio State games, and was 0-3 coming into this season in the Penn State game. So they needed to end an 11-game losing streak against those three teams in order to go bowling and do it in a blizzard on the road against a team that they had struggled with in the past. So credit to Coach Seawack for gritting his teeth there at the very end and getting those Hoosiers not only going bowling, but finishing in a very respectable place in a very respectable conference. Moving on to Navy, the midshipmen this year, led once again by Coach Ninja, second all time in League One career victories, opens at Texas Tech. Now, Texas Tech, most of the season in the top 25. They're 8-4 now, probably just on the fringe of the top 25. Have one of the better offenses in the country. And it was a road game to start the season against a bowl team. And Navy just couldn't quite pull it out there in the first game of the season. Obviously, you got a whole bunch of new players, new looks, maybe some new plays in that user game against Coach Bark that we talked about before, going 4 overtimes, thanks to a fourth quarter comeback, a rally by App State when they were trailing by 14 going into the fourth. So a heartbreaker there, but they quickly regrouped. They didn't get into a very significant slide next week with a road 7-point win in conference play for their conference opener to a good start in the American Conference. 7-point win over Temple, and then headed into their bye week 2-0 in the conference, 2-2 overall, and then coming out at the half before rallying to win 23-20 in the second half. And that was probably Marshall very close to going to a bowl, their conference opener. Sometimes that can be difficult. But it was this Memphis game, I think, even though they lost the following week to SMU, and we'll get to that in a second, they were trailing by 14 at the half. Very, very close to being 2-1 in the conference, 0-1 in the division. Memphis and Navy both in the American West. 2-3 on the year, but instead 3-2. That afforded them the opportunity to not have have it count as much. Had they lost to both Memphis and SMU, they would not be where they are today. They lost to SMU barely. That was late in the game in that rivalry game. It's a team that they have struggled with in the past, and they had them at home this year, and they were ahead by 3 points late in the ball game and through one of those passes that you instantly regret there at the very end. Following the SMU game, the Tulsa game on the road was a big win for them, but not as big as the following week when they went to South Bend, Indiana, home of the college football for Navy, as Notre Dame at the time was well regarded and well ranked. Following Notre Dame, a key to win the Western Division was ahead. Got into a tie ball game and threw another late interception. Tulane had the ball in field goal range, got a little greedy, ran a play, couldn't get it off, couldn't get back to the huddle to get the field goal unit out onto the field, field goal range, but got greedy, ran out of time. That game went to overtime, and AF merges victorious 53-51 in probably the most clutch and key game of their season. Because they did follow that up with a loss in that user game the following week at East Carolina, 38-35, a close run affair that would have knocked them out of the conference were it not for Memphis knocking off SMU that same very week. They finished the season with a couple of games against Southern Miss and the Army Navy game. Southern Miss, possibly a bowl team. They emerged victorious with a touchdown win there. And then, of course, as we spoke about at the top of the show, they won the Army Navy game 28-17. That's going to put them at 8-4 on the year. Their 6-2 conference record is going to be enough to get them into the conference championship game and a rematch against the ECU Pirates. We'll all be looking forward to that one. We'll get to that here in a few minutes.
Yeah, and this Navy team has been a scrappy team all season long. They have been fighting and keep fighting, and that's almost just, I mean, what you could say about our U.S. Navy. You know, they're always going to keep fighting. Doesn't matter where they're at, what's happening. You know, they keep pushing, and keep fighting. And I think that's a testament to this Navy team, how they've been all season long. And next here, we got the Syracuse Orange. I mean, I've mentioned it many, many times before in a lot of my articles and a lot of our college game day. This team has just been above everybody else. They've been outperforming every single team they played. They just are on a whole nother level that no other team in this league is on right now, currently. They are the Alabama of our generation now, or of our league. It's just them and everybody else. So you see quickly, I'll try to touch base quickly as we are due to time constraints. We are kind of running a little short on time, so we're going to try to get through some of these things so we make sure we touch on everything. The closest, probably their closest game of the season here is week one with the win over ECU, a blowout win in a neutral site game over Notre Dame. The 17-point victory over Fresno State, which really was a part two because they were playing a first game and winning, I believe it was like 42-7 or something at halftime. So this game should have been way bigger of a deficit. The big win over user App State. Then they go on the road and in all their ACC play pretty much just dominates everybody. You see 63-17 over Georgia Tech, 83-10 over Duke, who they played last year in the ACC, which obviously you see they will not be going there again this year. Bye game, then home game against Louisville, 77-31. On the road against a good Florida State team, 63-21. Clemson 65-37, rivalry game if you want to call it that. On the road 63-13 over BC. Bye week 80-24 over Wake Forest, 55-17 over NC State, and that's how they finished their season. They have just dominated every single team. They dominated the ACC. The ACC Conference Championship game, I think, is the best chance we might see it. Someone testing them, because as of right now, the Syracuse Orange team pretty much just walked through their ACC play, finishing the season off 12-0, 8-0 in ACC.
Moving on to the Washington Huskies, they opened the season with a close run affair. Has been a constant matchup between Coach Sweetest Coin, the head coach of the Washington Huskies, and Coach Seawack, the current head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. These two coaches have faced off every year, and this year, no different than the others. It was a one-score, excuse me, a one-score game, resulting in a 20-13 Husky win. The following week, a 7-point win on the road against the Trojans, and following two difficult games, Washington sitting at 2-0, feeling good about themselves. They felt a little bit better about themselves after beating East Carolina. That was a game that was, I believe, it was about 42-21 in the fourth quarter. With a 21-point lead, the Washington Huskies went no huddle and kept their starters in and kept their foot to the floor in a display of some kind to win 66-21. Week 5, UCLA conference win 42-21 over the Bruins, and just like that, Washington 4-0, feeling real good. Knocked off two users, knocked off two of the tougher teams in their conference. And lo and behold, they make a trip to North Carolina across the country and get ambushed by the App State Mountaineers, losing 24-21, final score in that game. And then rebounded very, very nicely against the number one team in the country. Stanford, at the time, was ranked first, and they get a win 29-21 in a game they were trailing for much of the way, thanks to a couple of pick sixes by the Cardinal defense. That Cardinal team, a stacked roster, one of the best rosters in the country this year in League One, and Washington got it done, gets back on the winning trail. Follows that up with a 38-22 win over Colorado. Colorado going 7-5 this year, pretty decent record this year for the Buffaloes. They put up a decent fight, but just like most of the other teams on their schedule this year, couldn't get it done against the Huskies. Number 22, California, couldn't get it done on offense, did a decent enough job limiting the Washington offense to 27 points. But when you score 8, you're going to have a hard time. And that was a common occurrence for Washington's opponents this year. You see a lot of low numbers on the defensive side of the ball. 17 points to USC, 21 to ECU, 21 to UCLA, 24, 21, 22, 8. And then, of course, here, 10 to Oregon State, 14 to number 19, Oregon, and then 21 to Washington State. So throughout the season, the Washington Huskies playing very good defense and doing enough on offense to get jobs done, ripping off those wins against Colorado, number 22, California, 52-31 over Arizona State, and then the 3 rivalry games to close out, 2 of them on the road, 1 of them at home, and none of them very close, against Oregon State, Oregon, and Washington State. And just like that, the Huskies are 11-1 and will be at 9-0, certainly hosting the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, this is a really good team. They played good football all season long. Besides that, surprise attack you mentioned in the Barker Bowl, losing that one. This team, who knows where they could be or what we could be talking about with them. I mean, they're still at number 5, so they definitely have an outside shot, maybe a national title, but definitely more difficult for them now. But had they not lost that game, we'd have one more team to throw in the mix that would be really hard to decide who's in and who's out. And so we'll finish off with our last user. Had to scroll a little bit farther down because this user did join later in the season. So I believe it was the first 3 games were all CPU led. So the Michigan, FCS, and Illinois game was the CPU. And Coach Hawk took over his first game. It was week 5, so he had the bye week, but his first game played had to open against the rival in Boise State, and that could be a little nerve-wracking as your first game in a brand new league. You don't want to impress everybody. You don't want to lose that first one, and got the job done. won by 10 over that rival there, and that was a big one for them. And they answer back playing a good Utah State team and win pretty soundly, 52-27. So people thought, oh man, this Coach Carter, he might get things done here at Hawaii. Um, but then things start to kind of turn for the worse as they lose to. This is a good team, but they lose to UNLV 56-48, and so people thought, okay, maybe that's just one loss. Let's see what he does. And then he has to play New Mexico. Like we said, they've been top 10 all season long. This is a really good football team. They know how to run the ball well, and they ran the ball very well against Hawaii and just obliterates them 62-17. And they just can't get out of this slump. They fall into it and they stay in it and they lose uh, by 50-70. Even with the offense scoring 50, you will not win if you're giving up 70 points. So their defense just really starts to struggle that back half. Then they're able to kind of bounce back and, beat Nevada and go win that one 31-24. Then they play San Jose State and win that game very easily, and they're still trying to keep themselves in the hunt. Um, and I believe right here, when they lose to San Diego State, they pretty much effectively ended any hope that they had outside chance of making the conference championship game. That officially eliminated them, and they lost that one in big fashion. Again, defense, letting them down big time, losing 62-24. And like we mentioned before, needed to really try to beat Fresno State to try to become bowl eligible. It's a rivalry game, user game. We played each other a bunch of times, so this was a highly sought game for everybody to want to watch just because of the history. And Hawaii was unable to get it done, so pretty much effectively ending their season at 5-7. We will not see the Hawaii Warriors play until the start of season 16.
So that concludes the regular season inside look at each team. We are now going to spend the week, advance to conference championship week. I will be signing off at this point in time. I will leave the rest of the show to Coach Silent Storm, and he will go through the conference championship games, the awards, the Heisman race, all of that in just a moment, as we are now, right now, advancing the week.
All right, thanks, Coach. Thanks for stopping by. Good luck with your endeavors, and again, always it's good talking to you, and glad that you were able to hop in the show.
Thank you, Coach. Yeah, going to be broadcasting a doubleheader tonight. Both the American Conference Championship between ECU and Navy, as well as the ACC Championship game between Syracuse and UVA. Those games coming up here in about an hour on Twitch on Six Gun Ninja on Twitch TV. Twitch.tv/ Six Gun Ninja.
I look forward to it, Coach. I'm gonna hop on there, and I'll make sure I get to tune into those games. Excited for those ones.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, so we'll go ahead and continue here. As you saw, popped up on the ticketer, we have the Heisman race as of week 15. I might be able to go see if there is a updated or when I believe the winners are after conference championship, but this is as of week 15. This is our current standing in the Heisman. Obviously, Tommy Tanavasa has been leading pretty much all season long. This guy is probably my favorite to win it. He can get it done on the ground and in the air. He's just been dominating every single team he's playing lights out all season long. He's really pretty much probably the clear favorite to win it. Not that these other four aren't deserving, but he's just been really kind of outdoing everybody else there. But right behind him is the senior running back Jonathan Ward out of Central Michigan, who's had himself one heck of a season so far. As you see, he's gone over 2,000 rushing yards with 41 touchdowns. And he's also got it done in the air. And I just noticed that number, 66 receptions for 666 yards. Going to have to name him the devil. Um, 7 touchdowns in the air as well, giving him 48 total touchdowns, roughly 2,900 yards offensively. So he's had him a good year too. But again, like I said, Tanavasa has just been. It's really hard to compete. I mean, he's 2,526 rushing yards as well as his 3,376 passing. Combining together, let's see, that's 82 touchdowns with only 6 turnovers because 2 fumbles and 4 interceptions. So it's really hard to compete with this guy. But these guys are trying. In third place right now we have Savon Ahmed from Washington, who's had a great season as well. He's just shy of 2,000 rushing yards, 29 touchdowns, and it's oh, just give me one quick second. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I have kids, so a little bit of an interruption in the broadcast there. But right back into it. Yeah, we had Ahmed has had himself a good season, and he's sitting there in the third spot of the Heisman race. In fourth place, senior running back Kevin Marks out of Buffalo um, has played one heck of a season. He's helped the Bulls be where they are, has kind of helped them be as successful as they are. Has about 1,500 yards there, about on the season. Well, 1,500 rushing yards, 480 receiving yards, and it looks like 32 total touchdowns on the season. He has played very well, and he sits in the fourth place spot of that. And the last spot is CPU quarterback junior out of Texas Tech, Sam Woods, kind of sneaking his way there at the very end. It had been the quarterback at New Mexico that has been had that fifth place spot, but it looks like this quarterback at Texas Tech has overtaken that, and he's had himself a good year. But really don't see him having much of a chance of winning the Heisman. Like I said, I believe Tanavasa is the clear favorite. He's hold on one second again. And sorry about that. You know, when you live in a house full of children, they are very loud. They don't have any sense of. Actually, I don't know what the word I'm trying to look for there, but they're just loud. And so my daughter is very vocal in one individual. So yeah, if you could still kind of hear, I even shut the door, and you might still be able to hear in the background because she is just that noisy. But yeah, this is our current Heisman standing. I will go and give a look because we have officially, you hear the noises going on. We have spun. Oh my goodness, it sounds like. Alright, one second. I have someone screaming hysterically. Sorry about the delays, everybody. I don't know if you were able to hear. My daughter had a friend come over, and I guess she's afraid of dogs. We have two of them, and she was screaming hysterically. Made me think that there was something very, very wrong. And I go in, and like my daughter and her laying on the ground. My daughter's like protecting her, and she's just petrified of our dogs. Both our dogs are very friendly and loving dogs, so it's just I guess this girl has a fear of dogs. But I had to go out there and check that because, yeah, that was kind of, she had a terrifying scream. Um, so go ahead and switch back. Sorry, guys, about that. It's just, you know, it's living in a house full of children. This is what happens sometimes. So we'll go to click the Heisman Watch again to see if anything has changed now that we are in Conference Championship week. And Nothing's changed. It is the same order of which we saw, in which I mentioned I had the screen up there for. So that is our current Heisman race now that we're in Conference Championship week. And quickly, we'll go look at our award finalists. Just kind of talk about top three at this point. We're start off with the Maxwell Tanavasa. Is like I said, he's just been playing lights out all season long. He is definitely a leader in a lot of these awards, and rightfully so. Followed up by him is Jonathan Ward, the running back from Central Michigan, and Savan Ahmed from Washington. Those are our top three for the Maxwell. Walter Camp, Tommy Boy is up there leading it as well again, followed by Jonathan Ward of Central Michigan and Ahmed. Same three for the Walter Camp as the Maxwell. Go to the Chuck Benner Award and see Kevin Green of Syracuse leading that. So far, first three awards, all Orange players. Like I said, this team is very deserving of their position they are in, and just they are a league above their own. They're just have phenomenal talent everywhere on the field, and you're seeing it here. Uh, Followed up by Live Onwuzurike from Washington's in second place there, and Tanny of Appalachian State comes into that third place spot of the Chuck Benner Trophy. Next, we go to the Niagara. I'm probably gonna say a lot of these wrong, so I won't say them. You'll see it. Green is leading this one as well. On Ruzurike in second place, and McKnight coming here in third place, just ahead of Tanny, where McKnight was the fourth place in the last award. We have the O'Brien Award, where, of course, as you'd expect, old Tanny Boy is leading that spot, followed by Ed Cox of Northwestern and that number one Northwestern team. And then we have Austin Kendall, the quarterback from Oklahoma, in the third place spot. Then the Doak Walker Award. Jonathan Ward's leading this one. Of course, this is for our best running, one of the best running backs, and of course, finally can get an offensive award where Tanavasa can't be in there. But I bet you if he was a running back, he might be in consideration for this because he has more rushing yards than our leader in this award currently. But it is Jonathan Ward leading, followed by Ahmed and Marks in third place. As you see, a lot of these awards are led by user teams. The Blitnikoff Award here goes to some of the league's best receivers, and it's led by James Lofton, the junior receiver from the Orange, followed by Lees out of Northwestern. So you see the Northwestern quarterback and the receiver in there could be due to a lot of the reason why the Wildcats have had such great success. And then Dez Fitzpatrick from Louisville rounding out in that third place spot. The Mackey Award going to a lot of the league's best tight ends. What do you know? Syracuse Orange player Mark Bavario is leading the pack so far, followed by Cody Mitchell out of Marshall and Will Mallory from the University of Miami finishing in that top third spot. Sorry about that. Outland, we have the Nick Brahms from Auburn in first place so far. Walker Little out of Stanford in the second place spot. And last, Gunnar Vogel from Northwestern in the third place spot. In the Remington, we got another Auburn player leading the way, Brahms, who is leading both of these. And then Aaron Servas is in second, the Orange player. And then you have Blaze Dax followed up in third from New Mexico. Lombardi Trophy, you got Live Onwuzurike leading the way in first place there. Then Tanny is in second and McKnight in third. A lot of these names you've been hearing multiple times. These guys playing very well for their teams, and shows why these teams have had the success that they've had, because their players have been playing at high levels all season long. Best Linebacker Award, Green is leading that one there, followed by another Orange player, Troy Henderson Jr., And then rounding that out will be Brandon Wellington of the Washington State, or Washington Huskies. Sorry, not Washington State. In the Thorpe, some of the best secondary players. You got Devonnie Reed out of Central Michigan leading that one, followed by Smoke Monday of the Auburn Tigers. And then Trayshawn Smith of Louisville rounding it out. The Groza Award, some of our best kickers. You got Matt Cotlin is leading the way from Michigan State, followed by Nate Needham of Bowling Green. And to finish that one out would be Bubba Baxa. I'm probably saying it wrong, but who cares? Out of the University of Miami, then rounding that one out. Then the Guy Trophy. You got Sterling Hoffrichter out of Syracuse leading the way there. Then Skylar DeLong out of Alabama in second place. And third place, Derek Gorman of the Texas Longhorns. And our last award, Best Returner, is led by Jermaine Braddock. Something positive for the Hawaii Warriors. The junior receiver there leading the way and looking to probably win that award, followed by Michael Schumander in second place, and rounding it out, Sean McGrew of the Washington State Huskies. So that is our top three of each of the awards. Really the only three that have any consideration of winning it, and more than likely the guy you see in that first place spot is probably going to be your winner. We'll officially have, we'll officially have those winners next week after conference championship week. So lo and behold, the moment we've been waiting for, we're going to do our official conference championship reviews or reveals of who will be playing and who has won their conferences and who is going to be matching up. And we're going to start off with the ACC. Like we mentioned, Syracuse has won the Atlantic Division at 12-0, 8-0, and they will be facing off as, you see they are number 2, and they will be facing off against number 8, Virginia Cavaliers, finishing their season off 11-1, 7-1 in the conference. So your ACC Conference Championship in season 15 will be the Syracuse Orange going against the Virginia Cavaliers. Next, we go to the American Conference, and the winner of the Eastern Division is ECU, getting it done. Number 25 ECU with the 9-3 record, 7-1 in conference play. Got the head-to-head over USF because they did beat USF in the regular season. So ECU getting it done, winning the East and sending them into the American Conference Championship game, which they will play the Navy Midshipmen. So we get second conference championship reveal, and we have our first user versus user conference championship game. Navy finishing 8-4, 6-2. We mentioned in their end how their season finished. That win over Tulane was a big one because it secured their spot in the American Conference Championship game. So there you have it. The season 15 American Conference Championship game will be between the number 25 East Carolina Pirates and the Navy Midshipmen. Next conference championship, the Big 12. We do not have any users in this one. So the Big 12 North is won by UCF, which was an ex-user team, and he just left to go to Washington. So his old team gets it done. They win the North, and they will be facing off against Oklahoma State in the season 15 Big 12 Conference Championship game. UCF versus Oklahoma State. Next in the Big 10, we do have a user in that one. So the Big 10 East winner was the Michigan Wolverines. We definitely thought this would be very interesting because I do believe Michigan had lost to Ohio State. Oh, no, they beat Ohio State. So that's why they got the head-to-head there. Indiana was so close. So, a lot to build off for next year. So close, but they did not make the conference championship game. Michigan wins the East. They're representing the East, and they will be facing off against that really good number 1 Northwestern Wildcats. Finished 12-0, 9-0 in the conference. So your season 15 Big Ten championship game is between the 14 ranked Michigan Wolverines and the number 1 ranked Northwestern Wildcats. In the CUSA, UNC Charlotte gets it done winning the East, going 8-3 with a 7-1 conference record, and they will be facing the UTEP Miners in the season 15 CUSA championship game. Independent doesn't really matter. They do not have any conference championship, but you see Army goes 7-5. Notre Dame finishes off 6-6. Next, we go to the MAC championship, which we've kind of mentioned what this one will be, but we are going through every single one. Winning the East is Buffalo, getting the tiebreaker over Ohio. Hadn't beaten them in the regular season. They did drop that game at the end of the season, so good thing they didn't lose any others, or else Ohio might have seen their way back to the MAC Conference Championship game. But number 16, Buffalo, gets the head-to-head over Ohio to win the East. And they will be facing off against the undefeated number 3 Central Michigan Chippewas. A game that we're definitely looking forward to. Our second user versus user conference championship matchup should be a great one. As we mentioned, it was a 17-13 game in the regular season. So we definitely look forward to this rematch here. Both conference championship games so far were great games and their rematches. So just more excitement for this week. Cannot wait for it. So your season 15 MAC championship game is between the 16 Buffalo Bulls and the number 3 Central Michigan Chippewas. Next in the Mountain West, winning the Mountain Division, Air Force 11-1, 9-0 in conference play. Their only loss was at the hands of the Army Black Knights. Lost to Army. That was their only loss, but they did not lose a single conference game, giving New Mexico their only loss of the season. And because of that, Air Force has won the Mountain and is heading to the conference championship game. And Fresno State wins the West to go to the Mountain West Conference Championship game. Obviously, UNLV better regular season record, but Fresno State got the wins they needed to, like we mentioned before. And they will be heading to the Mountain West Conference Championship game. So your season 15 Mountain West Conference Championship game, number 10 Air Force facing off against the Fresno State Bulldogs in a rematch in a game that was decided by 6 points. So another exciting matchup there in conference play. In the Pac-12 in the North, Washington wins that game with their one win over Stanford. That's the big difference maker, that they beat Stanford in the regular season. Finished with that 9-0 conference record, 11-1, winning the North, and they will be facing off against 6-6 USC. The Pac-12 South looking horrendous this year. Only 2 teams over 500 in their regular season record. Not a single team goes over 500 in conference play. You had 4 teams all at 4-5, just really kind of ugly. So the season 15 Pac-12 championship will be between the number 5 Washington Huskies and the 6-6 USC Trojans. SEC, no users in this one, so we will look at it quickly. Georgia, number 12, wins the SEC East, and they will be facing off against number 4 Auburn, who went 11-1, 9-1 in the conference. And the only conference that does not have a conference championship game, the Sun Belt. And like we mentioned before, Appalachian State had secured the Sun Belt. They have won. They are your season 15 Sun Belt championship or champions. So congrats to the App State Mountaineers for being this year's Sun Belt champions. So we'll go again quickly just to recap all of the conference championship games. So you can kind of look at them just from a schedule standpoint. Again, you have the user versus user Navy at East Carolina, because some of these conference championship games are not at a site. They are hosted by the better conference team. So Navy will travel to ECU to play in that conference championship game. Fresno State will have to travel to number 10 Air Force to play in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. This game played in Detroit neutral site. Number 16 Buffalo against number 3 Michigan, Central Michigan. Correction. The This is a neutral site game. 6-6 USC against number 5 Washington. This is a big one. One of the teams that maybe tests the Syracuse Orange, as this is a neutral site. Number 8 Virginia going up against number 2 Syracuse. This should be fun and exciting. That game will be on later tonight, as well as the Navy ECU game. Should be about a little less than an hour for kickoff for that one. UTEP and UNC Charlotte playing neutral site for the CUSA game. Number 12 Georgia facing off against number 4 Auburn in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. Michigan, number 14 Michigan taking on number 1 Northwestern, and Oklahoma State at number 24 UCF. So we have a lot of exciting games. A couple ones I want to quickly touch base on that could be very big in some of our. I don't want to say just bowl season. All these games have bowl implications, obviously, but some of them could affect national title in some BCS games. So we'll go obviously start off the games that are really important to watch this weekend. Right here, number 14 Michigan versus number 1 Northwestern. Obviously, Northwestern is undefeated. Michigan is a good team. If Northwestern wins, they pretty much should lock a spot in the national title game. If they lose, that could cost them not only the Big Ten championship, but a shot at the national title. This game right here, Auburn being number 4, just outside. Or actually, I'll start with the number 2 team, so we look at certain things. Then you got number 2 Syracuse. I believe, since they are playing number 8 Virginia, if Syracuse wins this game, they lock themselves in the national title game. If it be staying number 1 or number 2, I think playing that good of an opponent in the conference championship game. If they win the ACC and beat number 8, I think they're in. If Northwestern loses and they win, I think they definitely secure their spot. But either way, I think if Syracuse can win this game, they're in. Next, the number 3 Central Michigan Chippewas going against number 16 Buffalo. This was a close game in the regular season, so this is a game that Central Michigan could lose. But I know they have a lot riding, and not just on the MAC championship, but a possible, again, national title berth. If one of those 2 teams loses, if Syracuse loses or Northwestern loses, and Central Michigan is able to beat Buffalo, I think these guys get the push to go ahead to go into the national title game. If both Northwestern and Syracuse win, I think both of their opponents are good enough to where the polls will stay where they are. Northwestern at 1, Syracuse at 2. Maybe Syracuse jumps to 1, but Northwestern stays at 2. I think Central Michigan's only hope is either Syracuse or Northwestern has to lose for them to get in. If Northwestern to lose, Syracuse wins, Central Michigan wins, we could see a user versus user national title game, which would be very interesting and very fun. But Central Michigan has a chance, and when you go undefeated, you always want a chance. So it would be, I know, very heartbreaking for them if they're able to go 13-0 and just be outside of it. But you can't worry about that. They just need to go out here and focus on playing Buffalo. But I believe if Syracuse or if Syracuse or Northwestern lose, one of those 2 teams lose, and Central Michigan wins, I believe they'll see themselves in the national title game. Next, with Auburn playing a good 12th-ranked Georgia team, they have a little bit tougher path to get in, but they are playing a good team. I think they would need both Syracuse and Northwestern to get beat or upset this weekend to have their shot in there. I don't think there's any other way they can make it unless both those teams lose. And I think that goes the same for Washington, especially since Washington is playing a very, very weak USC team. I really have a hard time seeing Washington having any chance. I mean, they really would have to have Syracuse lose. They'd have to have Northwestern lose. They also would need Central Michigan to lose and to win to really get in there. But, like I mentioned before earlier in the broadcast, had they beaten Appalachian State, we could be having a different discussion. But they didn't. They're number 5. They are where they are now, and playing a very weak USC team, I don't think they'll get enough to push them in. However, if they win this game, they're going to the Rose Bowl anyway. So, they have a very, very outside shot, but they do have a shot. Other than that, I don't think there's any other game that really could impact the national title game. Other than the ones I mentioned, I really just think it's those, and I don't think any of the opponents that would beat the teams that could make it, if that would be like being at 14, they wouldn't get a big enough jump. 12 couldn't go up enough. Number 8, they with Washington being number 5 and Auburn being 4, I don't think they would get a big enough push either. Obviously, you see unranked. Buffalo at 16. Had they not lost at the end of the season, maybe, but I think when they lost that overtime game, they pretty much ended any hope for them as well. Fresno State, unranked. Air Force number 10. I still think they're too far out. And then obviously ECU at 25. But this is, again, your season 15 conference championship games. We will have 2 of them are getting played tonight. The American Conference Championship within the next hour should be played, and following right after that, the Virginia-Syracuse game will be played. If you go to our website, I'll try to get a link in the video descriptions for these to the website. I should get announcements for our other conference championship games. We do have an issue possibly with the Washington game. Our user has run out of Xbox Live, so he's trying to get that figured out as of right now. So with that game, I would put like an asterisk, question mark, something like that. We're trying to get that figured out, see what's happening. But we should soon get announcements for when the Fresno State game should happen, when this user game should happen, and that's it. We just have this one's getting played tonight, as well as this one, figuring out what's going on with there. So we just have 2 other conference games that have to be announced, and that will get it. So that is going to be it for now. We are live here in Conference Championship game. Next week, around probably on Wednesday, we will do another College Game Day edition of League 1 to do our bowl reveals. Because we could go look at all the bowl projections, but so much of that can change due to what happens in the conference championship games. Washington at number 5, could be a shoe into a BCS game, but if USC knocks them off and upsets them, you see a 7-5 or 7-6 USC team in the Rose Bowl. So lots of things can happen. So we will do in a week or so from now, when we go do our spin, we will do another College Game Day, and we will do a college bowl reveal. We'll go through and reveal all our college bowl games, especially highlight the user ones. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been a great regular season. We still have 2 more weeks of great action here to come in League 1 to finish off season 15. Until then, I'm going to sign off with the Go Dogs, and hope you guys have a good one.